All right, let's get into it. For anyone who loves roses, you should know there's a secret battle being fought right under the soil in your garden. And this choice, it determines pretty much everything, from whether your rose survives the winter to how long it'll live. Yeah, we're talking about own root versus grafted roses. And today, we're going to figure out which one is right for you. So picture this. You're at the nursery looking at two rose bushes that look, well, identical. But they're not. There's a hidden secret right at the base of the plant. One of them is basically built for a quick sprint, and the other, it's a marathon runner. One could completely die in a hard freeze, while the other might just rise from the ashes like a phoenix. The big question is, how on earth are you supposed to choose? Well, to answer that, we've got to meet the two contenders in this showdown. They might look the same up top, but trust me, what's happening underground is a totally different story. Okay, first up we have the grafted rose. This thing is kind of like a Frankenstein's monster of the plant world, but in a good way. It's two plants fused into one. You've got the beautiful, fancy rose you want on top, that's called the scion, and it's been surgically attached to the tough, super vigorous root system of a completely different, hardier rose. That's the rootstock. And they meet at this little knobby point called the bud union. This is how most roses are made commercially because it's fast and efficient. And in the other corner, you've got the own root rose. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's one single plant, genetically the same from its tiniest little root all the way to its prettiest petal. There's no fusion, no bud union, none of that. It's a purebred, growing on its own 2 feet, so to speak. Simple, tough, and totally true to itself. All right, now for the first test, and for a lot of us, this is the most important one, a brutal winter. This is where that fundamental difference between these two roses becomes a literal matter of life and death for your garden. You see, for the grafted rose, the thing that makes it special, that fusion of two plants, is also its biggest weakness. That bud union, that little knot where the two parts connect, it is extremely vulnerable to the cold. It is, without a doubt, the plant's Achilles heel. And this really lays out the two futures for your plant. If a deep freeze kills that bud union on your grafted rose, it's game over. Seriously, the beautiful rose you paid for is gone for good. You might get some random wild shoots coming up from the rootstock, but your prized rose is dead. Now look at the own root rose. If its canes freeze all the way to the ground, it's just a setback, no big deal. It can send up brand new canes, the exact same rose, right from its roots. It's a true survivor. So for anyone gardening in a cold climate, we're talking zone 6 or colder, the winner of this round is just crystal clear. The own root rose is equally hardy all the way through. That ability to regenerate from the roots, it's basically a built-in insurance policy against a bad winter. What would be a total death sentence for a grafted rose is just an off year for an own root. Okay, but what about the long game? Let's move on. Forget a single winter. Let's look at how these roses perform over decades. This right here is the story of the sprinter versus the marathon runner. This chart just shows the trade-off perfectly. Grafted roses, thanks to that supercharged rootstock, absolutely explode out of the gate. They grow faster and give you way more flowers in those first few years. They are total sprinters. But the own root roses, they might start a little slower, but they are built to last. They're busy building a stronger, more resilient foundation for the long haul, and they really hit their stride later on, easily winning the marathon. So why do the grafted roses fade? Well, after about 10 or 15 years, that bud union can just start to fail. The tissue breaks down, and that restricts the flow of water and nutrients from the roots to the canes. The plant basically starts to choke itself out, it loses its vigor, and it just declines. And that's not the only problem. As that top part gets weaker, that aggressive rootstock down below senses its chance. It starts sending up its own shoots, which we call suckers. And if you aren't constantly out there cutting those things back, the rootstock will stage a hostile takeover, and your beautiful, elegant rose will literally turn back into a wild, thorny bush. Now, this might sound like I'm saying own root is always the answer, but it's really not that simple. The big takeaway here is that the better rose depends entirely on your garden's specific challenges. It is all about home field advantage. Let's break this down. Let's say you've got that dense, heavy clay soil. Well, a grafted rose with a tough rootstock like our multiflora is going to do way better than an own root rose that might just drown. Or if you're in the south with warm, sandy soil, you've got to worry about these little pests called nematodes. A nematode-resistant rootstock is your best bet, hands down. And in really hot climates, the sheer power of a rootstock like Dr. Huey can push out an insane number of blooms. But just like we saw, if your number one enemy is that deep winter freeze, own root is the undisputed champ. Okay, so we've looked at all the angles, the winter war, the test of time, the home field advantage. Now, let's bring it all together. I'm going to give you a super simple framework so you can make the right choice for your garden every single time. It really just comes down to these three simple questions. First, what's your climate like? If hard freezes are your biggest fear, you should probably lean towards own root. Second, what's your soil? If it's really challenging or full of pests, a specific grafted rose might be your hero. And third, what's your goal? Are you looking for quick, explosive color for a couple of years, or are you planting a permanent shrub that you want to be there for decades? But hold on. What if you live in a cold place, but you fall head over heels for a rose that you can only find as a grafted plant? Is all hope lost? Absolutely not. There is a technique, a gardener's secret weapon, that can actually give you the best of both worlds. And here is the secret. You plant it deep. That's it. By burying that vulnerable bud union 4 to 6 inches underground, you're giving it a thick blanket of insulation to protect it from the cold. But even better, doing this encourages the top part, the rose you actually want, to grow its own roots. Over a few years, it basically turns itself into an own root plant, giving it that amazing longevity and resilience we were talking about. So the next time you're at the nursery, you'll know exactly what to look for. You'll get the trade-offs between a fast start and a long life, and now you've got that secret tip for turning a potential weakness into a massive strength. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets to a long and beautiful life are just waiting to be found, buried right below the surface?